of course, you will also see that 6% has managed to go, to go through air defenses. And this is where Ukraine, I think, has to work to improve, because on average, we're talking about like 92% of effectiveness on average in the past 3 months against Shaheds, but still there is an 8% more or less that managed to, to bypass air defenses and reach its target, or at least explode, against something. Which creates damages, can kill civilians, can kill people, destroy critical infrastructure, for instance, or even residential buildings. So this is, of course, something that it's not acceptable, and Ukraine has to work to kind of increase even more the effectiveness. But more on average, the impact of electronic warfare is of around 12% in the past 3 months. So this is remarkable, considering also the way through which Russia has also been using this type of weapon, and because Russia is learning and is trying to deceive and make it difficult for Ukraine to intercept even the Shaheds, which are considered at the lower end of the spectrum, right? So now is trying to make them more resistant and hardened against electronic warfare, is trying to make them flying higher and faster, and along predefined routes to evade Ukrainian air defenses and mobile fire groups. So Russia is learning, and it's a constant a cat and mouse game, as everyone used to say now, in the drone space, and that's applied as well to the counter US part of the equation.
Yeah, and I don't think necessarily just the number of how much a missile or interceptor is worth it's not the only factor. I think also the overall production capacity and the willingness to deliver certain amount of interceptors and air defense systems to Ukraine is also a factor in itself. And
Of
it
course,
seems like
yes.
this calculus and the numbers might, it's on the paper it's easy to illustrate things, but I think it's an even bigger problem than just the number on the paper for Ukraine.
Yes,
So
no, that's definitely the case, and also one thing that I think is worth noting is that um, you know mobile fire groups and specialized units that hunts down Shaheds are not made of robots, or simply created overnight. You need to train them. You need to integrate them into the force structure in a proper way, and so they also need resources, as you said. So production capacity for low cost interceptors. We are talking about interceptors that can be rocket based, or mainly coming from manpads capabilities, or from for instance type of systems that have been exported to Ukraine by Western countries, provided by Western countries such as the US. We are talking about the Vampire systems, for instance, that use a type of rocket which is quite cheap, right? And it's at this band has been created precisely for the type of counter US that we are talking about. And so the cost of these interceptors is if we talk about the advanced precision kill weapon system, which is the rocket used by the Vampire, which is a laser guided rocket, is around, let's say, $45,000 per unit, which is right almost on par with the Shahed cost, more or less. So this is fine. But when you have to use, sorry, manpads like the Stinger or others, the cost per interception goes up a bit. and becomes even higher with the high-end interceptors, of course. So you don't want to use those for the Shahed. And you can see in the videos here in the slides that there are many types of kinetics that you can use against the Shaheds. The Gepard self-propelled, anti-aircraft gun is a great example of that. Even though the cost, of course, depending on how many munition it uses to shut down a Shahed, can go up, sorry. But it's certainly cost effective, and it's mobile as well. Then you have manpads, as I mentioned, and also tactical aviation, which is, I think, the least one of the least ideal options that you want to use against Shaheds. But sometimes you have to use that as well, because the number of Shaheds that are launched against Ukraine overnight can be very high, and so you need many type of different countermeasures combined.
You,
But
you
I think also, yeah, please,
I
sorry.
just wanted to say, like, it's also a problem where you remove capabilities to, and you have to basically uh, force Ukraine. That's what they do. They force Ukraine to shift their capabilities over to these systems that they can saturate uh, the battlefield with, and that will open
Yes,
up opportunities for the Russians with conventional airstrikes, for instance, and missile strikes, because the air defense picture is shifting towards these mass attacks with Shaheds. So yeah,
yes.
definitely interesting to see how many different means that the Ukrainians are fielding, because the more layers you have, the less you need to shift your capabilities. Right?
Exactly, and regarding the Shahad specifically, I mean, we're talking about a system that is not particularly sophisticated in terms of technology. It uses a piston engine with a propeller. It has, of course, honeycomb frame and composite structure, especially in its latest iteration built in Russia. But we are not talking about a very high-end type of systems. The warhead has been improved as of late with tungsten effectors into the warhead, which is a high explosive, typically fragmentation warhead. But at the same time, the overall cost of the system, as I mentioned before, is not that much. And the thing is that Russia can produce them at scale, and as you said, I mean, when they are launched together with other type of weapons, and especially cruise missiles and ballistic missiles, this become very, very complex for Ukraine to counter them. Um, and the Russians are also, trying to make them more and more, let's say, resistant to electronic warfare, because they know that Ukrainians are becoming more proficient in that space, and so they want to kind of, level again the playing field with Ukraine in this realm, and that's why they are putting different types of component into it. So if you have the presentation with the components, I can show you a few interesting aspects of it. So, for instance, at the beginning, Iranian-made Shahads used a type of antenna or control reception pattern antenna that was basically four with four arrays, but was not very high quality. And so the ability of basically Ukrainians to counter them with jamming and spoofing techniques was quite effective. But then the Russians started to realize that in order to overcome electronic warfare, they needed to integrate different type of components, and so they added control reception pattern antenna called Cometa, which is a Russian-made module to receive satellite signal from different type of constellations.